Hey there, you rebelicious soul. It is great to have you here. I'm excited to inspire you again today, and I hope that this podcast episode will open up new possibilities within you. Enjoy and feel free to reach out if I can support you in any way. Do you remember last episode when we talked about how relationships are the ultimate opportunity for growth because they reflect our deepest pain? Well, as you can imagine, there's so much more that we can say about that. It's not just your stuff that you get to see. It is also your partner that goes through their own shit. And you are the person who comes closer than anyone else, both physically as well emotionally, which means that sometimes you may find yourself being the punching ball. And that's no fun. Yep. Can be quite a lot to take in sometimes. And obviously this affects you. The question is then, how do you respond to that? Your natural instinct might be to become defensive, to protect yourself. And obviously, a healthy sense of protection is what we all need. But when we turn to our old adaptations, how we learn to survive in the world, and often these are coping mechanisms, we might get angry and passive aggressive, or we become resentful. Perhaps you find yourself criticizing, blaming, and judging them. Maybe you notice that you become, distant. You withdraw. Or perhaps you give them the silent treatment. Some may collapse into their own drama. Maybe that's something you recognize as well. I'm not saying that this is always a bad thing, because the expression of your emotions is obviously part of your relationship and part of your own sovereign expression. It can be beautiful to know that your partner can also hold you in that emotional state. We're not robots here. So when your partner is going through something and when your partner is mirrored and tends to lash out, then this is going to have an effect on you. Nobody is asking you to be perfect. But what we need to be aware of is that it doesn't become excessive, that we don't stay stuck in that state of anger. We don't want to stay stuck in our own victimhood, because then the expression becomes excessive and unhelpful, and it becomes unbridled self-expression that really is just one of the losing strategies in relationships. That's when you react to the situation from a very primal instinct, from an adaptation, like I mentioned before. It's like you learn to adapt when you were young, but that adaptation is not your mature or wise self. What we want to learn is how to respond from our inner grounds. And that is exactly where I feel that life is always inviting us in to take a good look at ourselves again. That's where the goal is. Instead of becoming reactive because, we're being attacked and we're being neglected or we're being whatever, and we feel that we need to stand up for ourselves from a place of, I'm not going to take this any longer. And some healthy assertion, there's nothing wrong with that. But, very often it comes from an angry place or an entitlement or a righteousness. That's not the right grounds. That's not the grounds that I'm talking about. Because the true gold is, looking at how we can respond differently and stay closely connected to our hearts. One of my biggest practices in life is to really still stay close to my heart and to honor that space of love. I also know what it's like to become entitled and to become righteous and to feel like I deserve better and, this is just not right and I want to control the situation and all of that. I've been there. And I really had to learn to stay closer to my heart. So often I ask myself this question: what would love do? The quality of love that is very non-judgmental, it's compassionate and that's open and gentle and also firm. You know, what would love do? Because the answer is that love doesn't take things so very personally. I really need to ask myself that question over and over again, because I tend to sometimes take things personally. I think I'm being attacked. And I know that I'm not the only one here. Love would take time, you know, to feel my own sensations and my own stirrings, and to allow them, and then parent myself, to then carry myself. And that's what the love for myself would do. The love for my partner that I feel inside would compel me to see things from their perspective and background. Yeah. Because love itself stays open and kind and compassionate and spacious and understanding and gentle. And love also sees through the bullshit. It's not that love is just soft. There's also a truth in there. Really seeing what's true and what's not. Calling one out on it, you know? Love sees the possibilities rather than the limitations. Love looks for entrances rather than closing down. And like I said, love knows how to set boundaries in a healthy and firm way. Because it's not like we're a doormat when we're in the space of love. Not at all. We have a healthy sense of protection here. There's a healthy sense of, healthy boundaries that are up. And in that case, when you really feel that someone is attacking you, you can just stay grounded in your healthy space of love and be like, well, you know, this is something I'm not going to accept. And you're very welcome to come back when you feel grounded again. You know, for example, if a partner becomes angry and screaming, etc., that's something you don't have to accept. And then you take care of yourself, because that's what your mature self would do. Like, I'm not going to expose myself to this kind of, you know, yelling and this kind of communication. That's what the healthy part would do. You would take a breath, maybe walk away for a bit, take a time out, and then see, you know, at some point, if you're both in a state of being able to communicate in a mature way, yeah. This is very much about connecting to the healthy part of your brain. We tend to, throughout the day, we're not full-time in that healthy part. We're not always in a state of connection. There are many moments throughout the day that we're triggered, that something very small might happen, and our sense of safety is compromised. Our nervous system responds to this. We might go to our sympathetic nervous system, which is where we are in fight and flight. And this is very often where we are when, that first sense of I'm not safe. Sometimes that leads to us becoming more in that apathy, that feeling of that collapsing, where we feel it's pointless. There is a hopelessness there. And that is the next stage. So the first stage that we're in our nervous system is connected and open and centered. And then when the danger starts to arise, we become more we enter the fight, flight, or even fix. You know, we tend to want to fix things. And if that all doesn't help, we drop down into what we call our dorsal state, which is more around apathy, feeling lethargic, hopeless, despair, collapsing. Those are the three stages. However, what we want is, especially if we feel like, something is moving, something is hitting me, to recognize that, so that we can then, instead of, going down the rabbit hole in our own nervous system, we want to reconnect to that healthy part of ourselves. It's as if, and when we look at the brain and how that works, it's the subcortical system of our brain. So the limbic system. We want that to be reconnected to the prefrontal cortex, which is the mature part of our brain. The limbic system was developed many, many years ago and responds very quickly because it needs to be able to protect us from harm. That's why, the whole fight and flight response happens, because that part is needed to respond to a severe threat. It needs to be able to mobilize us so that we can run away in case there's something, in case shit hits the fan. The mature part of our brain is a lot more recent, but is not able to respond that quickly. However, it is able to think a little bit more, take a little bit more time to regulate ourselves. As human beings, whether we like it or not, we are not rational beings. We are driven by our emotions, by our very old brain. 95% of all decisions that we make are made on an unconscious level, and that includes our decision to react to our partners when they trigger us. So a lot of this is very unconscious, and we tend to, go into that sympathetic state, the fight-flight state of our nervous system when things get rough. And we forget to bring on board that heart space, the space of love, that healthy part of us. So what I would recommend is that you find ways that if you notice like, something is hitting me, first of all, become aware of it. Become aware of, what are the triggers, especially when your partner is going through something rough and you are being the punching ball. Recognize what happens within you and see if there are ways that you can regulate yourself. You could go for a walk. Nature is always a great way to regulate yourself. See if you can find a place to just sit and be with yourself. Maybe meditate. Maybe you want to have a cry, for example. And obviously, when you're in that place of connection again, you're connected to yourself. Also look at, how are you connected to your own healthy boundaries? So that certain behavior you don't have to tolerate, obviously, or you can talk about that. But then you do that from a place of love and compassion and openness and groundedness. Yeah. That is in the end, when we are centered in ourselves, we can truly connect to the other person instead of, our own sense of entitlement, instead of connecting, feeling connected only to that adaptive child. In fact, when we are in that adaptive part of ourselves, there's not even space for connection. And this is exactly why, if we want healthy relationships, if we want our partners to also, who are also going through their own shit, if we want to take the lead of our own lives instead of dropping the responsibilities with them, no, it's got to start with us. You need to start with you. You take the responsibility by connecting to your heart space, by keeping yourself regulated. And if shit does hit the fan, that you find your ways to regulate or co-regulate with your partner. Sometimes they take the lead, sometimes you will. I love how Terry Real, my mentor, says, in every relationship, you both need to be allowed to go crazy, but you have to take turns. Yeah, because two systems who are going crazy together, well, we all know what that's going to be like. That's just one big recipe for disaster. So see how you can take turns in that. So if you're being the punching ball and your partner's not in a good space, see how you can stay connected to your heart, to yourself. Do some things that really nourish yourself so that you can carry the load for a bit. Good luck. Thank you so much for listening. It's been my absolute pleasure to share this with you again. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode, and if you're hungry for more, please check out my website, michellekoops.com, and subscribe to my newsletter in which I share so much value every single week. Have a magical day. Stay raw, stay real, stay revelicious.